Hey guys, today I am doing my August wrap up and I can't believe August is over. What the heck? Time is going by way too fast. It needs to slow down. It needs to slow down so I can read more books. But I did have a pretty successful reading month. I was pretty happy with the books that I read in the month of August. Again, I read a nice wide variety. So without further ado, let's talk about the books I read in the month of August. The first book I read this month was Self-Health by Miranda Sings. For those of you who do not know, Miranda Sings is a YouTuber. She's hilarious. At least I think she's hilarious. She's very strange, and that's kind of what I love about her. She's just kind of out there and does some crazy, weird things all the time. And so this is her book, and it's basically full of advice from Miranda Sings. Advice that you're probably not actually gonna follow, but it's hilarious nonetheless. I loved this book so much. I am personally a huge fan of Miranda Sings, therefore I really enjoyed this book. It's basically a Miranda Sings video in book form, and that's why I loved it. Then I read A Man Called Eva by Frederick Backman, and this story follows a man called Uwe, and he's just this grumpy old man, and throughout the story you kind of follow him through his ups and downs, and you kind of just gain a better understanding for his character, and that's kind of what this story is all about. Throughout the story you kind of break down the different layers of his character and gain a better understanding for why he is the way he is. This is one of those stories that you just leave feeling so good about it. It's just such a heartwarming story. It's a story threaded with humor and sadness, and it definitely kind of makes you think about the different people that you interact with on a day-to-day basis and kind of the things that they may be going through or the different experiences that they might have been through. I really liked this book and I would highly recommend it. It was just a moving and nice little story. Then I read Mosquito Land by David Arnold, and this is about a girl by the name of Min who has just moved in with her dad and her stepmom, and she finds out that her mother is sick, and so she goes on this journey to get back to her mother and to kind of figure out what's going on with her mom. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and unfortunately it fell pretty flat for me. I know that so many of you guys like this book and I really wanted to like it, but unfortunately I just did not like it. I think part of the reason why I didn't like this book is because it felt like I've read this story before. It didn't seem very new or original or kind of like a fresh take on like this road trip kind of story. I also felt that at times this book was trying way too hard to be deep, and I'm just not a huge fan of that. Like, why can't we just have a fun, crazy adventure on the road instead of having like these really deep thoughts that just don't fit in well with the story? I did really like the main character though. I found her to be very flawed and just unique and interesting, and she made for a great main character, and I enjoyed following her journey. Then I read Room by Emma Donoghue, and I don't know how to explain this book without spoiling it. I don't know what is considered a spoiler with this book, but I will just read the line that I read in my book haul. This little sentence in the description definitely kind of gives you an idea as to what the story is about. Room is home to Jack, but to Ma, it's the prison where she has been held for 7 years. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea as to what this book is about. Obviously, I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to give too much away, and I don't know what is considered a spoiler for this book, but I loved this book. This was such a powerful book. One thing that I can say that was kind of negative about this book, I guess, is that I didn't love Jack's perspective, the main character. I just found him to be rather annoying at times, which I can completely understand why he was aggravating at times. The first being he's completely young. The second being he's put in the situation where he doesn't really understand what's going on and he doesn't know how to handle different things. So I completely understand why he was aggravating, but he was still aggravating to read from at times. But overall, like I said, I really love this book and I can't wait to see how it's translated into a film. Then I read Flights and Chimes and Mysterious Times by Emma Trevane, and this book is about a boy by the name of Jack who steps through a door one day that leads him to an alternate version of London. The main thing that I loved about this story was the writing. It was on point. It was so detailed and beautiful, and it just really kind of built up this picture as to what this alternate London looked like. And that's just something that I really loved about the story. The way that she wrote about different things made it so easy to visualize. I will say that I had very meh feelings about the characters. I felt like they just weren't fleshed out very well and that they didn't have very much personality and they were just very one-dimensional, but for the most part I enjoyed this book. It was a fun little adventure and I'm glad that I picked it up on a whim and read it. Then I read the graphic novel Baba Yaga's Assistant by Marika Mikkula and illustrated by Emily Carroll, who is one of my all-time favorite illustrators, and I was so freaking excited when I found out that she had illustrated this graphic novel. It made me drop everything I was doing and pick it up and read it because I was so excited for it. So this is about a witch by the name of Baba Yaga, and she is an actual figure in real life used to scare children. Like if they disobey, their parents will be like, yo, Baba Yaga is gonna come and get you, you better watch out. And so she's used in a way to kind of discipline children, I would say, in a weird way. So it's about this girl who's going through a really rough time. Her mother has passed away and her dad is kind of in the dating scene and she's not enjoying any of the girls her dad is bringing home, and so she goes and decides to be Baba Yaga's assistant, and you just kind of follow her on this little adventure. I really enjoyed this graphic novel. It wasn't super creepy, which is what I was kind of wanting, but this is a middle grade graphic novel, so you can't expect it to be super scary or anything like that. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this. The thing that I love the most though is obviously the illustrations, because Emily Carroll is just such a fantastic illustrator. If you have not read anything by Emily Carroll, get Through the Woods. Trust me, you will not regret it because it is a beautiful graphic novel and a haunting story. This would be a perfect graphic novel for October, Halloween time, kind of creepy-ish, but not super scary or anything. So yeah, definitely check this out if you want kind of a fun, haunting, but not too scary graphic novel. Then I read Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella, and this was the Booksplosion book of the month, and this month we were working with Penguin Random House, and I was not expecting to love this book as much as I did, but let me just say, I loved it. It was fantastic. If you guys don't know, this book is about a girl by the name of Audrey, and she is dealing with an anxiety disorder, and so she wears these sunglasses to kind of help her out, especially in social situations. Her sunglasses really help her, and I just loved this book so much. The first thing being the fact that it dealt with mental illness in such a respectful way, and then I also love the fact that this was a very lighthearted story, but still very powerful. You have all this humor throughout the story, but then you've also got Audrey, who is facing her anxiety and is kind of trying to get better and doing things to help her get better, and it's just so powerful and so great. Something that I feared going into this book was that Audrey was going to fall in love with this boy and that he was going to help her get better. Yes, there is a little bit of a romance within this book, but he doesn't come in and fix Audrey's mental illness. She's still struggling with it when she's dating him, and I really appreciated that because that's true to real life. Some person doesn't just come into your life and fix your mental illness. That's not the case at all. And so I was really happy because I was afraid going into this book that that was going to be the case, and it wasn't at all. Praise the Lord! But yes, like I said, I freaking love this book and I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. Go check it out. Then I read Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, and I'm not going to talk too much about this book because I am going to be doing a spoilery discussion for this book. I just haven't gotten the chance to film it yet, but I will be filming and posting it very soon. So once that goes live, I will annotate this book and you can click it and go watch it, and I will also leave a link down below. But yes, for the most part, I really enjoyed this book, and it was definitely a step up from Shadow and Bone. I wasn't a massive fan of Shadow and Bone, but this one was definitely so much better than the first one. Trust me on that. It was very slow going. It took me like 2 weeks to get through this book. Mind you, I was very busy at the time of reading this book, so that might have been the case. But I also felt like this book was kind of a filler book. It's just kind of there to lead you into the third book. That's just kind of how I felt about it, but I still really enjoyed it, and I'm interested to see what book 3 has to offer. Then I read The Sculptor by Scott McCloud, and this book is about a struggling artist who has just hit an all-time low, and then he is granted a wish, and the wish that is granted and the ability to sculpt anything that he could possibly imagine. But the catch is he only has 200 days to live. This was by far the best graphic novel that I have read all year. I would highly, highly recommend it. There is a bit of adult content, so be aware of that before going into it, but I loved this graphic novel so much. It was so moving and powerful, and just by the end of it, my heart was crushed, but I loved it so much. It was so great. Highly recommend. Then I read the graphic novel Super Mutant Magic Academy by Jillian Tamaki. This is about a bunch of students who are attending a magical academy. Basically, we've got a bunch of these like short stories that are hilarious and weird and strange and just so wonderful. I just love this graphic novel so much, and I would highly recommend it if you're in need of a good laugh, because this book had me laughing like no other. Like literally, it had me laughing out loud, and that does not happen very often while I'm reading graphic novels or just when I'm reading in general, but this book just had me laughing out loud, so I would highly recommend. It's a great graphic novel, and definitely go check it out. Then I read Paper Things by Jennifer Richard Jacobson, and this is about a girl by the name of Ari and her brother Gage, and both of their parents have passed away, and their mother's last wish was for Ari and Gage to grow up together. And so Ari and Gage are living with this guardian, and they just really don't enjoy living with her, and so Gage decides that they are going to go off. The thing is, Gage is really struggling to provide for Ari, and they basically end up up being homeless. I really enjoyed this book. I found it to be a very emotional story, and I also found this book to be very important because it is a middle grade book and it tackles a serious topic like being homeless. The one negative thing that I have to say about this book is that I felt like there was a lot going on and some of the things could have been taken out, especially some of the little petty drama that Audrey has with some of her friends. I feel like that could have just completely been taken out of the book. I feel like there just could have been several things that were taken out of this plot and this story would have moved on a little bit quicker and would have just held my attention a little bit better. But for the most part, I really enjoyed this book, and if you're looking for a very powerful, emotional, inspiring middle grade story, then check out this book. And lastly, I read some comic books, so I'm just going to go through and show you those comics. I will be doing another comic book reviews video, so look out for that soon. I will link it down below once it goes live. I read The Fade Out Act 1, The Woods Volume 1, The Arrow, The Woods Volume 2, The Swarm, Low Volume 1, The Delirium of Hope, and finally Alex and Ada Volume 1. Out of all of those comics, my favorite would definitely have to be The Woods Volume 1 and 2. I would recommend picking up both of these volumes and reading them back to back because they just flow together nicely. So those are all the books, graphic novels, and comics that I read in the month of August. You guys should let me know down below what was your favorite book of the month of August. I want to know. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you soon with a new video. Later. Wrap up, and I'm... Then I read... I almost said Then I read ha ha ha. Then I read oh my gosh, I just did it again. Literally. Why? I cannot speak for the life of me because I can't get my thoughts across. Hey, I can't speak for the life of me because I can't get my thoughts across. Hey.